Some are saying that this is starting to go in the direction of the potential obliteration of Irish culture and Irish Catholicism. Others are talking about a great replacement. The mass importation of many people from other cultures into Ireland. What might Christ's perspective be? What effect might this have on Irish Catholicism and Irish culture? Good people are befuddled and distraught. There are many reports of people waking up in the mornings in villages across Ireland to suddenly to find that there are a large number of unexpected visitors in their village. Love your neighbour, we're told. Welcome the stranger. The Irish were welcome once during famine time, so why shouldn't we welcome others? If you were fleeing from a war-torn zone, wouldn't you want to be helped? Do unto others as you would like others to do unto you. Sure, wasn't St. Patrick an immigrant, we were told? Shouldn't we help according to our resources? But there's a worrying side emerging. If this was people genuinely fleeing from a war-torn country, or if this was the natural process of immigration of people seeking employment and willing to assimilate into the culture and to contribute to the economy and the culture and contribute to society, well, that would be quite understandable. The Catechism of the Catholic Church in paragraph 2241 states that, and I quote, the more prosperous nations are obliged to the extent that they are able, and that's an important phrase, to the extent that they are able, to welcome the foreigner in search of the security and the means of livelihood which he cannot find in his country of origin. And that, folks, immigrants are, quote, obliged to respect with gratitude the material and spiritual heritage of the country that receives them, to obey its laws, and to assist in carrying civic burdens. And that, the Catechism says that political authorities may exercise the right to immigrate subject to various judicial conditions. Now, these are good guidelines, but that doesn't seem to capture what's going on here. How come there seems to be a large number of men coming from other countries, bussed into multiple locations, in many cases, multiple cases, without women or children, it appears, kept in larger buildings and centres, often under guard, without a sense of day-to-day assimilation with the working population or local people, in some cases apparently not from war-torn areas, and from some of those cultures which it would seem are strongly incompatible with Irish Christian culture. There are multiple centres springing up like this all over the country, and some of them capable, apparently, of housing thousands. In addition, there are reports of mass importation of people from other cultures going on right across Europe and the world all at the same time. Is there something bigger being orchestrated here? Could it be construed that this is more akin to not to immigration, but intentional, deliberate, orchestrated importation of large numbers of men from other cultures who often seems that they're allowed to board a plane, they somehow lose their passport en route. They're accepted through governmental immigration processes on landing, and then are housed at taxpayers' expense with multiple benefits at locations around the country, presumably with government knowledge and consent. Where's all this going? Where's all the funding coming from? Why does the ordinary citizen of Ireland not have a say in this? There are multiple reports of many large protests countrywide not being covered by mainline media. People are not being told or consulted prior to visitors arriving, and those who do raise a question are vilified, insulted, name called, or termed racist. Is it fair that hate speech legislation should be waved over people's heads if they dare share their thoughts? Shouldn't people be allowed to share their voice or to raise their voices? It would seem that also that there are a lot of people, or there are some people making a lot of money in the midst of all of this. Could there be other could there be other global crises that might be manipulated to justify even larger numbers of folk from other cultures coming into Ireland? Some are saying that this is starting to go in the direction of the potential obliteration of Irish culture and Irish Catholicism. Others are talking about a great replacement. Others, like Bishop Athanasius Snyder, is calling it an invasion of Europe. It seems to be becoming more apparent that there are forces within and without Ireland that hate Irish Catholicism and the Irish culture, and it would appear are singling Ireland out for some sort of special attention. And this raises some really interesting questions. Now, let's just stop up for a moment. There's another perspective on all this from a faith perspective. I'd like to share a few thoughts. Number one, God is allowing us, at least thus far. And that doesn't mean that we do nothing, but it does call for us to dive deeper into our Catholic faith. If we believe God's hand is upon Ireland, and I certainly do, then we have to believe that He has a road for us through all this. And if we listen carefully to His voice, He will give us the guidance, the instructions that we need. There is a call, I believe, for every person of faith to, as the scripture says, fix our eyes on Jesus, to fulfill our primary obligations to God, to family, to church, to work, to neighbour, to observing legitimate laws and remaining in a state of grace. I believe that the Lord would say to us that He sees everything that goes on in secret, whether that's evil or good, and that we're not to be dismayed by the magnitude of what we perceive to be wrong in the world or even the power of the evil one, but to follow His instructions step by step and leave the rest to Him. There are other questions arising. What is good government in God's eyes? What can people expect? What are the parameters and limits of good government? Isn't the government meant to be the servant of the people, not the other way round? How far can just laws go before they become unjust? If laws become unjust, what does the Church say about how Catholics should act? Interestingly, immediately after the section on welcoming the foreigner in the Catechism then addresses the subject of the duties and duties, the conscience, and the rights of citizens, and it has this to say in paragraph 2242, and I quote: "The citizen is obliged in conscience not to follow the directives of civil authorities when they are contrary to the demands of the moral order, to the fundamental rights of persons, or the teachings of the gospel. Refusing obedience to civil authorities when their demands are contrary to those of an upright conscience finds its justification in the distinction between serving God and serving the political community. Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. We must obey God rather than men." And the Catechism then goes on to say, when citizens are under the oppression of a public authority which oversteps its competence, they should still not refuse to give or to do what is objectively demanded of them by the common good. But it is legitimate for them to defend their own rights and those of their fellow citizens against the abuse of this authority within the limits of the natural law and the law of the gospel. And that's a very important comment there, within the limits of the natural law and the law of the gospel. The duties of civil authorities and the duties of citizens and the interface between the church and the political community are intriguingly outlined in the Catechism of the Catholic Church in paragraphs 2234 to 2257. Really worth a read. However, for today, there is one essential topic that must be raised. What would happen if what would happen if Ireland truly turned back to Christ as King? Why do I ask that question? Well, Pope Pius XI, he wrote in his encyclical Quas Primus, he said, the manifold evils in the world are due to the fact that the majority of men have thrust Jesus Christ and his holy law out of their lives. Ireland has, in large swathes, thrust Jesus Christ out of our lives. And there are consequences, the Church tells us. We have embraced abortion by popular vote, euthanasia, widespread free contraception, in vitro fertilization, graphic, corruptive sex education in schools. There's a rising derision of the church, the attack on morality, the priesthood, marriage, chastity, religion, and motherhood. I believe as a nation we are wide open to God's justice, and huge reparation is essential before it's too late. Pius XI also said, quote, once when men recognize both in private and public life that Christ is King, society will at last receive the great blessings of real liberty, well-ordered discipline, peace, and harmony. To political leaders, Pope Pius XI also said, if therefore the rulers of nations wish to preserve their authority, to promote and increase the prosperity of their countries, they will not neglect the public duty of reverence and obedience to the rule of Christ. Just listen to that. The public duty of reverence and obedience to the rule of Christ. Political leaders. Drawing these things to a close then, consider these scriptural principles. Hosea 14 says, Israel, now insert in there Ireland, come back to the Lord your God. Your iniquity was the cause of your downfall. Psalm 83 says, yet even now, if Israel, put in there Ireland, would walk in my paths, in a moment I would subdue their foes. The way Ireland is moving towards a downfall. The laws we are passing, the votes we are casting, the truths we are neglecting to speak, the passivity we demonstrate in the face of deeply anti-gospel legislation, we are set to bring disaster upon ourselves. We are in danger of moving towards a total plundering of our culture. It rests with we the Irish. It rests with you and I. Catholics and nations are called by the Church to, quote, again, as I've already said, to the extent that they are able, welcome the foreigner in search of security and the means of livelihood that they cannot find in their country of origin, particularly if folks are willing to respect their host country and assimilate and assist in carrying civic duties. But that's not what seems to be happening in Ireland today for the most part. We as our nation are open to anything that comes our way if we do not follow Christ. If Ireland does not have Christ as King, anything else can sit on that throne. It rests with us, the Irish. It rests with you and I. How long will it take before we are forced to turn back to Christ as king.